Welcome to the Storybook Africa podcast, a sanctuary of inspiration and transformation for the vibrant youth of Africa. Through the power of stories, we weave together the threads of resilience, hope, and cultural heritage, empowering young Africans to embrace their unique journeys with courage and confidence. From the sweeping savannas to the bright cities to the remote villages, each episode invites you to explore the diverse contexts that shape the extraordinary experiences and visions of Africa's youth. So sit back, relax, and let us transport you through the heart of Africa, where lions roar, drums beat, and beautiful life happens, birthing tales of wisdom that foster healing, growth, and development.
Hello guys. I am very happy to be on here. It's been quite an interesting week, so I'm excited to be hosting this. So just let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. If you can hear me loud and clear as well, because we're going to have a very phenomenal conversation today and we have a very amazing guest. Please let us know where you're joining us from. Tell us your name. Tell us which friend you brought on board with you. Tell us how your week has been. Has it been exciting? Are you happy? It's very rainy, across East Africa, so that's a bummer. But yeah, hopefully you're having better days wherever you are. So we're still waiting for our guest to join us. But in the meanwhile, we could be having a chat about all the other things that's happening around us. Oh, I see Carlos Klutze saying he's watching from Canada. Awesome. We have Bay Cindy watching from Kenya. Awesome. Mutheu joining from Nairobi, Kenya. Mutheu is part of the storybook team, so big up to you, Mutheu. Hopefully no one else is battling a flu like Mutheu. Did I put you on spot, Gloria? I hope not. If you're feeling unwell, all the best to you. Hopefully you feel better soon. I know the weather, for example, in Eastern Africa is really not the most favorable, but I hope everything is going on well through the rest of the world. Guys, so we started a very exciting series. Every Saturday morning, I go on Twitter or X Spaces, and answer some of the questions that you sent through info@thestorybook.whitneymwangi.com. And so far, we've done about, I believe it's 6 episodes. Yeah, last Saturday, we had the 6th episode, and this Saturday, we'll be moving on to the 7th. So what I do, some of the questions that I receive from different young people across Africa, and I theme it to a particular topic, and then I respond to that. I've tried to limit it to 30 minutes. So honestly, at best I can do is 2 questions. And sometimes I do end up giving tips and principles and general rules for managing some of the issues that are raised during, through the questions. So I encourage you to join us. Every Saturday, I go live at 11 a.m. East African time. That's GMT +3. And it's pretty exciting to know some of the issues that, young people in Africa care about. Through Q1 at the Storybook Africa, we've been handling love and connections. The theme for the year is #WhatReallyMatters. So Q1, we were taking care of love and connections, and Q2, we're going to move on to business and career. So do you know a young person that we should definitely host on our podcast, or do you have any questions around this area that we should most certainly address? Feel free to drop them even in the DMs of our social media pages. We have the Storybook Africa, that is the Storybook_AF, and our email is info@thestorybook.whitneymwangi.com. So if you send through your questions on there, I can get to address them, on that live. Okay, there she is. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Yes, I'm good. So good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Awesome. So welcome to the Storybook Africa Lives. We had retired from doing lives on Instagram. During the previous years, we focused on doing lives on Instagram because we wanted to engage our audiences. So we've moved to Twitter, X. Oh my God, X Spaces. So it's good to have you on here. I think this is our first live on Instagram in 2024. So hey, big ups to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So I'm excited to have this conversation with you guys. If you've not seen the poster, we are joined by Wakili, and we have to talk about Wakili. Does it mean lawyer, excellency? Wakili Nelly Minor, who's the founder of Guys Let's Talk, and she's also a mental health advocate, and we'll be chatting about self-love and mental well-being, finding inner strength. We're very pleased to have you. Thank you for accepting our invitation to have this conversation. And yeah, Karibu. So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about you and where you're joining us from.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Nelly Minor, and the Wakili is legal. Yes. A little bit about myself is I'm joining from Kenya. I'm born and raised in Nakuru. I am a firstborn. I have a smaller sibling, a younger brother. I am a lover of arts, mostly music. I really, really love music, especially if it's acoustic, like just something mellow and quiet. I think generally I would consider myself a jolly person. I have a heart for people and not particularly being an extrovert, but being useful to other people. Yeah, I think those are the things about me, the things that I do. I am a law student. Currently, I'm at Kenya School of Law, and I work at a legal and tax consulting firm. That's a bit of
Awesome. Big ups to you. It's a pleasure to meet you guys. Throw some fire in the chat for Nelly because she's young and she's doing amazing things out here. I did spend quite a number of years in Nakuru actually because my mom used to work there. My sister and I would visit quite often so we can have a good time. And I love how quiet, it's not busy, it's not crazy as it is in Nairobi, but yeah, I do miss that. I can see Steve Arroy saying, hello, good people. Guys, just make sure you say hi to your friends, invite them in. And if you already have questions and comments for Nelly, please be sure to drop them in the chat and we'll address that. Okay, so you've shared a bit about yourself. One of the areas that we focus on at the Storybook Africa is certainly mental health, but also business entrepreneurship, trying to empower youth to find meaningful ways of improving their quality of life. It's an area of passion for us to have conversations with people who are advocates for mental wellness and advocates for prosperity for young people. So tell us a little bit about your journey towards starting Guys Let's Talk and, what inspired you to get there.
I think this started in 2020. So what happened is, what everyone knows happened in 2020, COVID struck. And the interesting thing is it gave many people an opportunity to now just sit with their minds and figure out, okay, so what goes on up here? So for me, I had subconsciously neglected my mind. There were things that I would struggle with before, but then I would easily distract myself with life. So these things came to fore and they became so heightened. What I am talking about is basically our COVID, being at home, not being in school, working, gave me an opportunity to, quote unquote, I was forced to figure out how to deal with it. So I started doing some research, basically Googling, finding specialists and professionals around mental health and talking to them, trying to understand, okay, so what is all this? Because I'm feeling some type of way, but I don't particularly understand what one. So doing that for myself, and I grew so much, I figured because of, I'm not sure what about my personality, but it's how people feel comfortable around me to confide in me. So I knew for a fact that this is not something that I'm going through alone. I had nothing to lose. So I decided to start talking about social media. So this is about July, if I'm not wrong. So I posted my story on my Instagram and I got a very good response. People telling me they relate and many people saying that they don't know what to do about it. I have learned through my personal research. I would now also get the professionals to talk on my social media pages and create awareness and basically giving tools on how to deal with mental health challenges. So, guys, let's talk came from there, because I think a huge chunk of what we're struggling with as young people right now is that we don't talk about these things. I think this is how our environment is. It doesn't allow us to converse genuinely. Plus, putting in the aspect of social media and the fact that we only bring our best aspects to social media, then we forget that there are parts of us that also need attention. So that is really how it came about. So over time, I have hosted lives like this, virtual events where, because of my love for creatives, I would bring in creatives to talk about or perform with the theme of mental health. And yeah, that has been the journey. And I think what makes it worthwhile is getting feedback from people and people telling me that I really learned a lot through this and that. I was motivated to work on myself or improve on the things, on my habits, for example, because of what you said or what you posted or what you did or conversations that I've had. So yeah, I think that is how creating the community of people that care about their mental wellness through Guys Let's Talk.
That's a really beautiful journey. And I particularly value the part where it started with your own authenticity, recognizing the gaps and, the issues that you were trying to perhaps ignore or sweep under the rug, and realizing that it's not working for you. And then extending that lesson to the community, opening yourself up in that way and opening your doors for other people to learn through you and with you, right? So for me, it speaks volumes about your heart, obviously, because you said that you have a heart for people and not necessarily in line with your personality. But then it sort of leads me to my next question, because I often experience young people who, once they start seeing their weaknesses, it doesn't lead them to a place where they want to open themselves up and, in fact, open their doors to the public. Instead, they want to hide, right? They want to hide, and it now leads to issues of self-hate and self-neglect and etc. And to the topic of today, how do you now see that connection between self-love and well-being, mental well-being? You've explained your story, but from your journey also, how do you see the relation between the two for people who don't quite understand how to make the two matter in a productive way as you did?
Yeah, I think first is to understand that it's a journey. Mental wellness, or the journey of taking care of your mental well-being, is a journey that is unique to everyone. So social media, and I have nothing against social media, gives a picture that is not particularly whole or true, which forces or makes people to take a step back with being authentic to who they are. I think first, I would like to first explain what mental health is. So mental health is basically the state of your mind, the health status of your mind, so that you're able to, for example, cope with stress, be of service to your community, realize and appreciate your abilities, and basically show up at least in your best self. So mental health challenges come in when you're having a bit of a difficulty to deal with aspects of your life, say, for example, handling stress. And then now the extent, depending on how bad it is, then it could go to being a mental disorder. But I think a lot of us as young people now, we're struggling with mental health challenges. And the means to resolve this is basically a change or just a shift of the habits that we do on a daily basis, and just a bit of a shift on our lifestyle. So if you're to take the journey to try to take care of yourself, and it shows up in different ways. For example, taking a walk, as simple as taking a walk, or drinking more water, or having enough sleep, and being okay with trying different aspects of what is said to be forms of self-care, and figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. Because again, it's a unique journey to be okay with. What works for me might not necessarily work for you, because we have had my journey is different from yours. So the things that you've been through and the things that I've been through are definitely very different. So the applicability of forms of self-care are also bound to be different. So figuring out what works, taking that journey, then, okay, so 1, 2, and 3 works. So let's now take those 3 and build on them, of the fact that just because it's self-care or self-love, it won't always feel good. I think that's another big thing. It won't always feel good, and it won't always be aesthetically pleasing. Like, there's nothing pleasing about waking up early to get to run or to work out. There's nothing pleasing about, for example, taking glasses of water, because then you will have to keep going to the loo every now and then. There's nothing pleasing about saying no to unnecessary junk and opting for a bit more healthier food. I'm not necessarily saying that you have to, diet, but just being cognizant of the small things that you do here and there, because they play a huge role in your overall mental well-being.
Right. That's also a very wholesome perspective. And I see that we cannot run from self, because if your mental wellness and the health has to be tailored to your own context, what you can do, what you need, then we cannot run from self, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you just love stories? Stories shape how we understand the world, our place in it, and our ability to change it. We are all products of our backgrounds, perceptions, and experiences, which form how we interpret the world. So we all have unique stories to share. You too can inspire the world with your story. The Storybook Africa accepts stories under 3 categories all year round: Young and on Fire, Note to Younger Self, and Dear Diary. You can also join us to transform the lives of youth in Africa by 1. Participating in youth empowerment projects we run, through which we partner with businesses owned by young Africans to host events, run campaigns, or award grants for business expansion. 2. Submitting or buying a digital product from our e-shop, which is a hub of amazing items that can support the community's healing, growth, and development journey crafted by young Africans. Excited to partner with us? Visit our website today for more information: www.thestorybook.whitneymwangi.com.
So in relation to that, I know that you recently hosted an event on Growth Hub. So are there lessons that you learned, takeaways that you can share with young people regarding how you can tie your own growth, and the aspect of accepting oneself, and any other topics that you discussed within this initiative?
Okay, so this is actually my first physical event.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm not seeing fire in the chat for Nelly. What is going on? You guys. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically it was on the 3rd of February. The goal was to create an environment for people to have a conversation around growth with a touch of mental health in the picture, because at the beginning of the year, everyone is always talking about achieving your goals, being new year, new you. So I figured maybe to tailor that a little bit differently is bringing the aspect of taking care of your mind, even when you're chasing the bag. So we had 4 speakers, 3 main speakers. The first one was talking about self-development. The second person came in to talk about her journey with mental illness, her journey with depression and anxiety disorder. And then we had the third person to talk about what we're talking about today, self-love and taking care of yourself. We also had a representative from Chiromo who basically came to tell us, okay, all this information you've been given is good, but what do we do about it? I think for me, first, the feedback that I got from people was they really loved the second speaker who came to talk about her journey. She's a very, very authentic human being. And I think you mentioned that you would want to have people you would host. So maybe I can refer her to you. She basically gave us an in-depth experience of how it is to live with depression and anxiety, how it is that your entire life could change because professionally it affected her profession and how she was able to keep going despite that. But for me, my favorite part was the representative from Chiromo, because she came and gave us, I don't know if you can say this, but there's a QR code here.
Okay.
That takes you to an assessment. So basically, an assessment of where you are mentally, and there are options of where or the people that you can reach out to so that you can be guided a little bit further. The other aspect that I loved the most was the last speaker who talked about self-care and self-love. I think that is where I learned or made peace with the fact that self-love and self-care doesn't always have to feel good, and that is completely okay.
Right.
Because cognizant of the fact that this is something that is good for you, so the rational you has to keep doing it over and over again. I think for me, for Q2 especially, I am telling myself that I am disciplining myself into the things that are good for me. So that was my biggest takeout from that event.
Right. Okay. So disciplining yourself to make sure that you get what's good for you. That's really interesting. You know, I appreciate Kenya because it's one of the countries that is quite advanced in the mental wellness conversation. Some countries are catching up. I think last year around October or at some point, Tanzania also launched a curriculum and some initiative by the government to support children under age of 15 with understanding their mental wellness. Countries are making progress, and it's really good to even hear that the academia and universities are involved to the extent of being willing to come to events to speak about it, because at a certain time, these were not conversations we'd have. People would be like, look, is it time to hustle or is it time to think about mental depression? What are you talking about? Yeah, but these are very sensitive times. I think I need to check the facts again, but I think now Africa has reported the youngest suicide. I think it was a boy in South Africa. He was 6 years old. So it's not looking good. And I do applaud you, obviously, for hosting these kinds of events. I think it's encouraging, and it just shows that there's room for more of this, and we should certainly seek to expand and all grow in these areas. So perhaps, Nelly, what do you think are some 5 simple steps that you can share with us when it comes to prioritizing self-love and building your inner strength? You've already shared a lot with us, but if you could just give us 5 steps for any beginner who's been out in the streets real bad, just doing whatever they think, and they just need 5 simple steps to start. What would be your 5 top things to do?
Okay. I think, like I said, it's a bit relative depending on who you are as a person. But the fundamental things are, as I mentioned, that first you need to be very open-minded as you approach this and be willing to try out different things and find what works for you and what doesn't. But I think once you also do that, then making peace with the fact that you don't always feel good, but sit in it, because that is where you find you build resilience first, and then that is where growth takes place as well. But also, if you're like me, who it's easier to discipline yourself in the quote unquote hard things, also remember to show yourself some grace, because you're only human. So be a little bit gracious to yourself. I think also, as you figure these things out, maybe among the biggest thing I would want to clarify is self-care and self-love doesn't have to cost you money. It really does not have to cost you money. Self-care doesn't necessarily mean taking yourself out on dates every other day or retail therapy. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could be as simple as taking enough water, taking enough sleep, taking a walk, calling a friend. For people pleasers, drawing boundaries despite it not feeling very good. So simple things like this, and being cognizant. I think I have repeated it so much, but the fact that it's something that is good for you, so you need to quote unquote parent yourself to be able to tailor some things. Because, for example, something as simple as doom scrolling on social media. Say, for example, you had a very busy day, and in the evening is when you're looking at your phone, notifications, da 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 da. So sometimes there's the aspect, I can't remember the name, but there's something about your mind telling you that this is the only free time that you've had. So please, by all means, scroll. But that's not good for you because you need rest so that you can show up tomorrow. So such kind of thing, being able to just parent yourself. That is
okay. I think I got that. So just being open to the process, being open-minded, trying to understand where you are and what you actually need, and then finding the resources. It doesn't have to cost money. I will not touch on the retail therapy because I feel kind of guilty with that one. So we'll just pretend I did not hear that. But yeah, it doesn't have to cost money. And being disciplined, parenting yourself. And lastly, I like that you say something it may look good or necessary, but is it good for you in that time and in that moment? Yeah, I really like that. So guys, if you're just joining us, we're about to wind up. But before I ask Nelly my last question, we've been talking about self-love and mental well-being, finding inner strength, and we are hosting Wakili Nelly Maina. So we've talked about her journey to starting Guys Let's Talk, and it's really been a personal journey and what inspired her to continue. And she's shared a few insights into her hosting her first physical event, which brought together different experts on mental wellness and even someone to share her personal story. You know, at the Storybook, we love stories. So stories all the time because they create a sense of community. So if you have a question for her, please be sure to drop them in the chat. Muteu says, I've learned setting boundaries is a form of self-love. Very interesting. That's true, very true. And Nelly has rightfully talked about that. As a people pleaser especially, it's very important for you to set boundaries. I can see some people saying hi to each other, I guess friends. Setting boundaries, prioritizing our wellness, pursuing our dreams and taking care of ourselves. So Nelly, lastly, in your experience, what are some common misconceptions or challenges that people face when trying to prioritize their mental health? And how have you seen it useful for them to overcome these challenges?
I think one is what I've talked about, the money aspect to self-care doesn't always have to cost money. It's not really a rich people's problem. It's a human problem. Right. It's also not a woman kind of thing to do. It's genuinely a human problem. So what would ideally work for women might not necessarily work for men because of the societal issues that could be present. But then the idea is what I have reiterated over and over again, finding what really works for you. I think the sad-ish or thing about self-care is that no one will come to do it for you. You can take all the time that you have to wallow in how you're not feeling good about yourself, in how you're not enjoying aspects of your life, but you really need to just make peace with the fact that it is you who is in charge of yourself. No matter how well other people could treat you, they won't be able to understand what actually is going on with yourself. At night, when you're in your solitude, you're the one who really knows what you need. So that is something that most people try to avoid, but the idea is just what I like saying is the only way out sometimes, or a lot of times, is through. So just go through it.
I like that. The only way out is through. Yeah, for sure. I do agree with you. And it's interesting when you say that mental health challenges is not an issue with women, because I was surprised to learn that historically mental wellness was first identified amongst soldiers during the World War, and they would call it hysteria. You know what we know hysteria now is you've really completely gone mad, you're in hospital. And so the soldiers who would be diagnosed with this, they would be sent home, and because they are weak and incapable of being part of the troops. And then later, as studies continue to advance, it now became a women issue because they're emotional. Their husbands have gone to work, they're left at home. Maybe they're not able to cope. So it became an issue of either weak men or women. And hysteria is now what studies call PTSD, which is now very common, right? And so it's interesting how studies and information and research has advanced to now create room for us to understand better what mental wellness looks like and how you can take care of yourself, and even to gain the confidence to say that the only way out is through, because people will be like, you know what, I'm not dealing with this. I'm going to work myself to the ground. Yeah, but that's lovely. I've really enjoyed having a conversation with you. I hope that we'll continue to engage and hear more about what you're doing and what you're learning through your events, so it can benefit the young audience, the audience of youth in Africa that we have at the Storybook Africa. So perhaps let us know where we can find you across social media. If you have a website, that would be useful to hear now as well. And I can just check for any last comments while we do that, Nelly.
Okay. I don't have a website just yet, but my social media handles are basically Wakili Nelly Maina, pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. But my mental health advocacy is under Guys Let's Talk. So it's _Guys Let's Talk _. Yeah, that is where people can find me on social media.
All right. Thank you so much. So we do have a question for you. What would you say about the advice advocated by self-help content creators on taking 6 months to oneself away from the world to figure out mental health? I like this question because I've asked myself that often. Like, do I need to get off social media to feel better, or do I need to exercise a bit more of emotional maturity and discipline when it comes to social media? Yeah. So what do you think, Nelly?
I think it's a little bit of both. But first, I think the reality of adulthood is there will always be something that needs to be done. So saying that you're going to take time away from quote unquote the real life might be a bit easier said than done, depending on how the structures of your life are. So then it takes me to the second part, which is exercising some restraints and wisdom in the things that you do. For example, social media, it's taking note of how much time you're scrolling on different social media platforms. Absolutely. And what you are looking at. What I like to say is, from your mind, everything else flows from what you feed. We used to say in computer, garbage in, garbage out. But what you feed your mind is what will reflect outside. So taking note of these small things here and there. So if you realize, which means then that you have to be very alert and aware of how different things make you feel. So if you realize that you're feeling a bit exhausted after you have been on social media, for example, or you've been around certain people, or you've been around certain things, then you need to figure out, okay, is it something I can do away with completely? If it's not, then figure out how you can limit the timelines. The timelines could be how long and also what time. It's very advisable not to get into social media as the first thing you do in the morning.
Right.
So such things. And also now reducing how long. If you would spend 30 minutes, then maybe make it 15 or 20. If 3 hours, then make it 2 hours.
Right.
I wouldn't advise or say that completely taking 6 months is a lot of time.
It is.
And social media is not entirely a bad thing, because that's where sometimes you can get information, connections that are job related, work related. Yeah. So they're good aspect of pretty much a lot of things, but there's need for awareness of how it affects you and what then can be done about it.
Right, I see. Thank you very much for that perspective, and I hope it's a satisfactory of an answer to Museo. All right, so I will let you go. If you just joined, well, the live is over, but we'll upload it as a podcast and it will be available on our website as well. so you can hit the replay and enjoy the conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nelly. Do have a good evening and chat soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been nice. Bye.
I'm glad. Bye, guys. Ciao.
So that's our story. What's yours? Be sure to connect with us on social media at The Storybook Africa on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or at The Storybook_AF on Instagram and X. Subscribe to the Storybook Africa podcast today on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until we meet again, keep writing your own story, and may it be a testament to your limitless potential. Hakuna Matata for now, and remember, your story matters.